you made it through the whole day. The messages, the meeting, the level voice that wanted to shake. Then the lights go off. The house goes quiet, and something you carried since morning finally breaks loose. You cry, alone in the dark, half embarrassed that a grown adult can come undone the moment no one is watching. Here is the strange part. The feeling was there at noon too. You simply had it under control. But that control is not free. All day, a region behind your forehead works to keep emotion in check. And by night, it grows tired, its grip loosening on a natural evening tide. So, a quiet question hangs in the room. Why do feelings you held together all day finally spill over the moment the lights go out? Welcome to Sleepy Science Facts. Let your shoulders come down from where the day has parked them. Nothing here asks you to hold anything up. The wall can rest now. So let us follow that question gently into the dark. You can hold yourself together through an entire day, through the meeting, the traffic, the small talk, and then the lights go out, and something gives way. The tears you kept back for hours arrive in the dark, quietly, when no one is watching. Nothing new has happened. The day is over. The hard part is behind you. And yet this is the moment the feeling chooses. It is one of the more familiar experiences a human being carries, and one of the least explained. So a question sits underneath tonight, and we will follow it slowly. Why do the feelings you held together all day finally spill over the moment the lights go out? Crying from feeling is something you share with nearly every person who has ever lived, and possibly with no other creature at all. Many animals produce tears to clean and protect the eye. But as far as researchers can tell, humans appear to be the only species that sheds tears from emotion alone. From grief, from relief, from tenderness. It is a quiet, strange inheritance. The very thing that can make you feel most exposed, most alone at 2 a.m, is one of the most universally human things your body knows how to do. Whatever is happening when you cry in the dark, you are not the first, and you are far from the only one. Holding it together is not just a figure of speech. It describes real work your mind performs almost constantly. From early childhood, people learn which feelings are acceptable to show and when. A set of quiet rules researchers sometimes call display rules. You learn to soften the face, steady the voice, swallow the catch in your throat. By adulthood, most of this runs so automatically that you barely notice you are doing it. You present a version of yourself that keeps moving, keeps functioning, keeps others comfortable. The composure others see is not the absence of feeling. It is feeling managed, held behind a face that has learned, over many years, exactly how to hold. There is often a distance between the expression on your face and the weather underneath it. Psychologists who study workplaces describe emotional labor, the effort of showing one feeling while privately carrying another. The warm greeting over exhaustion, the calm reply over frustration. Most people do a version of this all day, at work and at home, without ever naming it. The smile is real in the sense that you chose it. It is also a kind of covering. And covering takes something out of you, slowly, in a way that rarely announces itself. By evening, the gap between what you showed and what you felt has been widening for hours. Quietly, waiting for a moment with no one left to show. The name for all of this steering is emotion regulation, the ongoing process of shaping which feelings rise, how strong they grow, and whether they reach your face. It is not a single act, but 1,000 small ones across a day. The breath taken before answering, the thought redirected, the tear blinked back. Researchers describe emotion regulation as genuine work rather than something that simply happens on its own. It draws on the same brain systems you use to focus, to plan, to resist the easy impulse. That is why a long, feeling heavy day can leave you tired in a way that no amount of physical rest quite explains. You have been working the whole time, under the surface. That work does not seem to be free, and it may not stay easy as the hours pass. Many researchers describe self-control and emotional restraint as drawing on limited resources, a reserve that can run lower the more you spend from it, though scientists still debate exactly how this depletion works. What most people know from the inside is simpler. The composure that felt effortless at 9 in the morning can feel thin and hard to keep by 9 at night. The same small annoyance you shrugged off before lunch can bring you close to tears after dinner. Nothing about the feeling has grown larger. What has changed, perhaps, is how much you have left to hold it with. Behind your forehead sits the part of the brain that does much of this holding, the prefrontal cortex. It is the brain's center for planning, for judgment, for choosing the slower, wiser response over the fast one. Among its many roles is a kind of quiet supervision of emotion. It can dampen a feeling, delay it, keep it from spilling into speech or tears at the wrong moment. Think of it, for tonight, as a dam. All day it holds a rising reservoir of feeling behind a steady wall, letting through only what you choose to let through. The composure you carry into a difficult afternoon rests, in part, on the quiet strength of that wall. This prefrontal region is one of the last parts of the human brain to fully mature, often not finishing until the mid-20s. And it is among the first to feel the cost when you are tired or stretched thin. Neuroscientists describe its influence over emotion as top-down control, a signal traveling downward from the thinking brain to the older, faster emotional centers beneath it, gently pressing the brakes. When that control is strong, you feel steady, measured, like yourself. It is doing quiet work in you even now, as you lie here listening. And like anything that works by holding, it does its job best when it is fresh, and less easily as the day wears it down. Beneath that thinking wall lies a much older structure, small and almond-shaped, called the amygdala, one on each side, deep in the brain. If the prefrontal cortex is the dam, the amygdala is closer to the water. Quick, ancien, and deeply responsive. It reacts to what feels meaningful or alarming before you have consciously understood why, firing in a fraction of a second. It is part of why a certain song, a certain memory, a certain silence can move you before a single thought forms. The amygdala does not wait for permission. It feels first, and fast. And then the slower prefrontal wall decides how much of that feeling reaches the surface. So much of your emotional life happens in the ongoing conversation between these two. The fast, feeling amygdala below, and the steady, regulating prefrontal cortex above. Through the day, they stay in a kind of balance. The amygdala raises what stirs you. The prefrontal cortex decides what to show and what to hold. When that balance holds, you pass for composed even through a hard hour. Researchers study this pairing closely because it sits at the heart of how humans keep their feelings livable in a world full of demands. What you experience as keeping it together is, in large part, this quiet arrangement holding its line, hour after hour, mostly without your noticing it at all. Here is where the question we opened begins, quietly, to turn. If composure is not stillness but a wall actively held, if keeping it together is work the brain performs, hour after hour, at a real cost, then the tears that come at night may not be a sign that something broke. They may be a sign that something was finally set down. We began by asking why the feeling waits for the dark. It is starting to look less like the feeling arriving, and more like the holding ending. What? Then, were you spending all day to keep that wall in place? The next stretch of the night follows that thread. Not all holding costs the same. Researchers who study emotion describe different ways of managing a feeling, and two are worth knowing tonight. One is reappraisal, quietly changing how you see a situation so it stirs you less. The other is suppression, feeling the thing fully and simply not letting it show. Studies suggest suppression tends to be the more expensive of the two. The feeling still runs underneath. The body still carries it, and only the outward sign is held back. Most people, on a hard day, end up suppressing, smiling, nodding, pressing on. The feeling was never resolved. It was only kept off your face, still there, still waiting for a place to go. You hold your feelings differently depending on who can see them. This is not weakness or performance. It is deeply human, and it starts young. In the presence of others, colleagues, strangers, even people you love. A quiet part of the mind stays aware of being watched and adjusts. You steady yourself partly for them, to keep the meeting moving, to not worry your children, to not make the moment about you. Researchers find that people often express far less of what they feel when someone else is present than when they are truly alone. All day, you are rarely alone. There is almost always an audience, and so there is almost always a reason to keep the wall in place. The ordinary machinery of a day is itself a kind of lid on feeling. there is the next task, the next message, the next place to be, a steady stream of things asking for your attention. As long as the mind is occupied, there is little room for a deeper feeling to rise and be noticed. You may sense it faintly, a heaviness moving under the surface. But the day keeps handing you somewhere to put your focus instead. This is part of why grief or worry can seem to vanish while you are busy and return the moment you stop. The feeling did not leave. It was simply outcompeted, all day, by everything else pulling at you. Attention is a narrow thing. You can only hold so much in mind at once. Through the day, most of that narrow space is spoken for. The road, the screen, the conversation, the list. What is left over for your own inner weather is very little, and that may be part of the shape of a busy life. Some people fill their days precisely so the quiet never comes. But attention spent outward is attention not spent inward, and a feeling that goes unattended does not necessarily fade. It waits at the edge of awareness for a moment when the outer world stops asking so much. A moment that, for most people, arrives only when the day is finally done. Somewhere along the way, many people absorb a quiet belief that tears are a failure of composure, something to apologize for. You may have learned it from a phrase: "Don't cry. Be strong. Pull yourself together." Repeated until it felt like truth. So the crying that comes at night often arrives wrapped in a second feeling. A small shame, a sense of having lost the grip you were supposed to keep. It is worth saying plainly, even this early, that this belief is learned, not given, and that it is far more common than the people carrying it tend to realize. The tears themselves are older and simpler than the shame we have taught ourselves to feel about them. For many people, crying is something that happens alone or almost never. In front of others, the wall tends to hold. The tears wait for a closed door, a parked car, a dark bedroom. This is partly those early rules again, and partly a kind of self-protection. Grief and tenderness leave you open, and openness feels safest where no one can see. Researchers who ask people about their crying find that a great deal of it happens in private, in the evening and at night, away from any audience. The solitude is not incidental to the tears. For a lot of people, solitude is the one condition under which the feeling is finally allowed to come at all. Consider what the night actually removes. The colleagues are gone. The tasks are set down. The messages have stopped, or you have stopped answering them. The people you steadied yourself for all day are asleep or elsewhere. For the first time in many hours, there is no audience. No one to keep the wall up for. No reason left to manage your face. The very conditions that kept the feeling down through the day quietly disappear. Honor by honor. As the house goes still, what remains is you, and whatever you have been carrying, in a darkness that asks nothing of you. It is not a small change. It is nearly every reason for composure, gone at once. There is a particular moment most people know. lying in bed with the lights off, the day behind you, nothing left to do. No screen to reach for, no room to tidy, no next thing. For the mind, this is unfamiliar territory. Hours of steady occupation suddenly replaced by open, unstructured quiet. And into that quiet, whatever was waiting begins to move. The thought you kept sidestepping, the conversation you did not have time to feel, the grief that never found a gap in the day. With nothing left to hold your attention outward, attention turns, almost helplessly, inward, toward the very things the day's noise had been keeping at a distance. When the lights go out, the outer world dims in more than one sense. There is less to see, less to hear, less coming in to occupy you. And as the incoming quiets, the inner world grows louder by comparison. It is a little like stepping from a busy street into a silent room and suddenly hearing your own heartbeat. Nothing new was added, but with the noise gone, what was always there becomes audible. Feelings work in a similar way. In the fullness of the day, they are drowned out. In the emptiness of the dark, they are simply what is left. The tears that come then are not summoned by the night. They are only, at last, no longer buried. It helps to notice that the feeling arriving at night is rarely new. It is usually the same ache, the same worry, the same tenderness that moved faintly under the surface of your day. The thing you sensed at the meeting, in the car, at the sink, and set aside because there was somewhere to be. You did not escape it by staying busy. You postponed it. And feelings, unlike tasks, do not expire when ignored. They keep, patiently, until a quiet moment opens. Night is simply the first such moment most people reach. What surfaces in the dark is not the night's doing. It is the day's unfinished business, finally finding the room it was denied. As you settle towards sleep, your body begins to let go in ways you do not consciously choose. The shoulders drop, the jaw loosens, the breath slows and deepens. The same steady vigilance that held your posture and your face all day begins to ease, because the body reads darkness and stillness as a signal that the demands are over. But the guard that kept your feelings in place was part of that same vigilance. As the body's holding relaxes, the mind's holding tends to loosen with it. You cannot fully release the muscles of the day and keep the emotional wall at its full height. Letting go, it turns out, is not something the body does in pieces. There is something the darkness offers that the day rarely can. A sense of safety in not being seen. Alone in the dark, with no face turned toward you. The usual reasons to guard yourself fall quiet. You are unobserved, and being unobserved can feel, at last, like being unguarded. For a mind that spent all day aware of an audience, this is a profound and simple relief. It is often in exactly this kind of safety, private, dim, and free of judgment, that a held feeling finally feels permitted to come. The tears that arrive here are not arriving because the night is sad. They may be arriving because the night is. Quietly, the safest hour you have had all day. Put the pieces of the last stretch together and a shape appears. Through the day, you held a rising reservoir of feeling behind a wall you barely knew you were maintaining, steadied by tasks, by an audience, by the quiet rules you learned long ago. At night, the supports of that wall are removed. The audience leaves. The tasks stop. The body relaxes. The darkness makes it safe to be unseen. What was held is no longer being held. Seen this way, the tears are less an event that happens to you and more a release that happens through you. The natural settling of water once the wall is no longer being kept up. And yet a question remains open, the kind that turns you toward the deeper machinery underneath. If keeping it together is work the brain performs, the steady prefrontal wall holding the fast, feeling amygdala in check, then something about that arrangement seems to change once the day is done. The same brain that held the line so well at noon somehow holds it less easily at midnight. Why? What happens in the tired brain after dark? To the wall and the water behind it. We have named the parts and felt the pattern from the inside. What we have not yet looked at is the mechanism itself. And that is where the night leads us next. That wall you just heard about, the quiet effort of holding the day's feeling in place, is one you have been maintaining, in your own way, through all the hours behind you. Notice, right now, how much of you is still braced. The faint set of the jaw, the shoulders not yet fully down, a readiness that has not quite believed the day is over. There is no one here to hold it for. Let the bracing be seen, and let it soften a little, without forcing anything. The question of why the wall gives way after dark is still open. We have only begun to reach the reason. For now, nothing here asks you to keep the water back. Let the holding ease, and let us go on together into the dark. By the time night comes, you can feel how tired you are, and the tiredness is not only in your legs or your eyes. It is in the very circuitry that has managed your feelings all day. Every hour you stay awake, a molecule called adenosine gathers in the brain. The slow chemical weight we call sleep pressure. The prefrontal cortex, the region doing the most effortful regulating, is among the first to feel that weight settle over it. What loosens in you after dark is not a flaw in your character. It is chemistry, plain and ordinary. The long day catching up with the tired circuits that held you steady. Holding a feeling in place costs something real. Emotion regulation is not free willpower. It burns energy, draws on effort and focus, and wears down the way a gripping hand slowly tires. Researchers describe this as regulatory fatigue. The more you steady yourself across a day, the less easily you steady yourself by its end. Each held-back sigh in a meeting au balcon, each swallowed worry on the commute, quietly spends from the same limited account. By nightfall, the account runs low. So when composure slips, once you are finally alone, it is not that you stopped caring. It is that the muscle doing the holding has simply worked a full shift. Inside, every head runs a quiet negotiation between two brain regions. Deep in the center sits the amygdala, a fast alarm that flags anything touching fear, loss, or hurt. Above and behind your forehead sits the prefrontal cortex, which listens to that alarm and decides how loudly it gets to ring. All day, the prefrontal cortex sends calming signals downward, keeping the alarm proportionate. A steadying hand on a volume dial. This top-down control is what lets you feel something at noon without showing it. And like any hand held steady for hours, it begins, by evening, to drift. That quiet arrangement is at work in you even now, loosening as the night comes on. There is a reason the same worry feels heavier at 11 at night than it did at 11 that morning. Your brain does not run at one steady setting. It rides a daily rhythm. And alertness has a natural evening dip built into it. As the internal clock turns toward sleep, the systems that sharpen focus and top-down control ease off. Part of the body's ordinary wind-down. The regulating region grows not only tired from use, but quieter by design. Two forces meet here: a depleted regulator and a clock lowering the lights on it. So the same feeling meets less resistance after dark, not because it grew larger, but because less is left to hold it back. When you are worn down or short on sleep, small things land like large ones. A minor comment, a sad song, a memory you usually walk past. This is measurable. In a well-known study, Matthew Walker and his colleagues watched the tired brain respond to distressing images and found the amygdala firing far more strongly than in rested brains. By their measure, around 60% more. At the same time, the calming link from the prefrontal cortex weakened, as if the steadying hand had partly let go. Researchers call this decoupling. The alarm grows louder exactly as the region that quiets it grows faint. You are not overreacting. Your circuitry is. Notice that the feeling did not appear at night. It was there at noon, simply crowded out. Daylight hours are loud with demand. Tasks to finish, faces to read, decisions stacked one on the next. All of that fills the same mental workspace a feeling would otherwise take. Attention is limited, and a busy mind keeps difficult emotion off stage, running quietly in the wings while the front of the mind handles the day. It is not that the sadness was gone. It was waiting behind a curtain of errands. When the tasks finally stop, the stage clears, and what stood in the wings walks forward. It was never gone. It was only waiting for the noise to end. Around other people, you become a slightly managed version of yourself without deciding to. The presence of others, even kind others, switches on a quiet monitoring system. How does my face look? Is my voice steady? Part of the brain keeps watch on how you are being seen, and that watching itself holds feeling in check. Psychologists find that emotional expression shifts the moment we sense an audience. We regulate harder when observed. For most of the day, someone is always there. A colleague, a partner, a stranger on the train. The steadying is partly for them. And it costs. All day. A little more than you notice. Then the door closes. The lamp goes out. And for the first time in hours, there is no one to read your face, including you, since you can no longer see it either. In the dark and alone, the monitoring system has nothing to monitor. The effort of appearing fine has no audience to appear fine for, so it quietly stands down. What was held for everyone else all day is suddenly held for no one. And a feeling that has been waiting behind that effort finds, at last, an open room. The tears that come are not proof anything is wrong. They are what surfaces when the watching stops. Darkness does something to the body older than any thought. Reduced light and quiet signal to the nervous system that the day's demands are over, that this is a place to lower the guard. With fewer things to track, no bright screens, no moving faces, no next task. The mind stops scanning outward and turns in. That inward turn is where held feeling lives. The same stillness that lets sleep approach also lets emotion approach. They arrive through the same open gate. So the crying that finds you in a dark, quiet room is not the dark making you sad. It is the dark making you safe enough to feel. You have wept for 3 different reasons in your life and likely never sorted them apart. Scientists divide tears into 3 kinds, each made by the same glands but for its own purpose. There are basal tears, the thin film always present, keeping the eye smooth and clear. There are reflex tears, the sudden flood that answers an onion or a gust of grit. And there are emotional tears, the ones that arrive with feeling, the kind that finds you after dark. They look alike on the cheek. Yet, what triggers them, and possibly what they carry, may not be the same at all. The tear, you know, is really 3. In acute sense, your eyes are weeping gently, even now. Basal tears are the constant, invisible layer bathing the surface of each eye, released in tiny amounts with every blink. They are a careful mixture. Water for moisture, oils to keep it from evaporating, mucus to help it spread, along with proteins that guard against infection. This film keeps vision clear and the eye comfortable, working all day without your awareness. It is the plainest kind of tear, purely practical, nothing to do with feeling. Yet it shares the same source as the tears that come when you are undone. The emotional ones borrow the very same well. Slice an onion and your eyes flood within seconds. That is the second kind. Reflex tears are the body's rinse, triggered by irritants. Onion vapor, wind, smoke, a stray eyelash. Sensory nerves in the eye signal an intrusion, and the glands answer with a wash of fluid to flush the surface clean. These tears are almost pure protection, a reflex as automatic as a blink, with no sadness behind them at all. They can pour freely while you feel nothing. And this is the quiet clue researchers noticed. If reflex tears and emotional tears do the same washing, why would the emotional ones exist as something separate? That question opens the next. The third kind begins somewhere else entirely. Emotional tears are not set off by wind or grit, but by feeling. Grief, tenderness, relief, the ache of being moved. Their command comes not from the eye's surface nerves, but from deeper emotional circuitry, the limbic regions that handle what matters to us. Uniquely among animals, humans seem to shed tears from emotion alone, because they begin in a different place. Some scientists have asked whether they might also be made of something a little different, whether feeling tears carry a chemistry that onion tears do not. It is a fair question to ask. What is harder is answering it with confidence. You may have heard that a good cry flushes stress out of the body. The idea traces to William Frey, a researcher who, in the 1980s, proposed that emotional tears carry away certain stress-related substances, such as the hormone prolactin, along with other chemistry the body makes under strain. Some researchers still find the proposal appealing, that feeling tears might literally usher out a little of what distress leaves behind. It is worth saying plainly, though this remains a hypothesis, with only modest evidence and little firm replication. It may be part of the story, or it may not. Tonight, it is offered as a gentle possibility, not a settled fact. So where does that leave the tears you shed alone at night? Here is what can be said with some confidence, and what cannot. What is well supported is the setting. A regulating region worn down by the day. An alarm grown loud. A dark room that finally lets feeling surface. What is far less certain is whether the tears themselves carry anything away. The question we started with is quietly changing shape. We began by asking why the feelings spill over after dark. Now a second, softer question stands beside it. Whether that spilling, far from being the day breaking you, might be doing something for you instead. Notice how the room has softened around you. You're breathing a little longer. The effort of the day loosening its grip. If something wells up while you rest here, let it come. In this dark, there is no face to manage and no one keeping score. The idea that emotional tears carry stress chemistry out of the body is a hypothesis, not a settled fact. In the 1980s, some researchers proposed that tears shed from feeling might hold higher levels of stress-related substances than tears from a cut onion. They pointed to hormones like prolactin and to stress signaling molecules. But those studies were small, and the finding has been hard to repeat. So most tear scientists still treat it as an open question. The relief you feel at night, then, may not come from draining anything toxic and noticing that makes your tears no less real. The comfort is genuine even if its source is not the one we long assumed. The calm that arrives after a hard cry has a steadier explanation than any chemical washout. When the crying passes, the nervous system tends to shift out of high arousal and into its calming branch, the parasympathetic side. Heart rate slows, breathing deepens, and tight muscles begin to loosen. Researchers have measured this recovery dip in the minutes after intense crying. It looks less like a tank being emptied and more like a body stepping down from alarm. That downshift is part of why the pillow feels softer once the tears stop. The body, no longer braced, easing its own way back toward rest. The wrung out. Lighter feeling after crying may be your body returning to baseline, not proof that anything left it. Emotional tears often come at the very peak of arousal, the moment the system is most switched on. The cry itself can mark the crest, and from there the calming branch carries heart rate and blood pressure back down toward rest. The distance between that peak and the calm is wide, which is why the calm can feel like being emptied out. In the dark, with nothing else competing for attention, the contrast feels wider still. What you read as being drained is often just being lowered. The long descent from a high place, mistaken for the loss of something. Crying does not leave everyone feeling better, and that too is ordinary. When researchers ask people how they feel afterward, the answers split widely. Some report clear relief. Others notice no change at all, and a share feel worse. Most often when they cried alone, felt ashamed, or could not stop. What seems to decide the outcome is context. Whether comfort followed, whether anything got resolved, far more than the tears themselves. So if nighttime crying does not always soothe you, nothing in you is broken. The mind's response to its own tears runs differently from person to person, and yours is one ordinary version among many. The same cry can soothe by day and unsettle by night, depending on who is near. Crying seems to have evolved partly as a social signal, a wordless call that draws comfort from others. When someone answers gently, the soothing tends to land alone, that half of the mechanism is simply missing. At night, solitude removes the responder, so the tears still send their signal with no one there to receive it. This is part of why crying alone in the dark can feel unfinished. The part of you reaching outward is doing exactly what every human's tears were shaped to do, even on the nights when no one is there to answer. For many people, the hard part of crying at night is not the tears. It is the shame that trails behind them. Cultural messages often frame adult crying as weakness or as losing control. When that judgment turns inward, the body's alarm can switch back on. Jaw tightening, chest bracing, undoing the calm the cry had just begun to build. Researchers note that harsh self-criticism after strong feeling tends to stretch distress out rather than settle it. So the weight you carry to bed may be the verdict, not the weeping. And that verdict was learned, not earned, taught to you somewhere long ago, and never once deserved. Shame can quietly cancel the relief that crying was about to give you. The calming rebound after tears depends on the body feeling safe enough to stand down. When shame floods in, why am I like this? The body's alarm turns back on itself, and arousal begins to climb again. The cry that could have lowered you gets written over by the story about the cry, This is why, on some nights, the tears bring no rest at all. It is not the crying failing you, it is the judgment arriving on top of it. A second wave that lands harder than the first and leaves less rest behind. Most nighttime crying is ordinary release, but sometimes it is a message meant for daylight. Regulation that is working tends to leave you steadier afterward. Crying most nights, or waking already in tears, can point instead to something the day keeps postponing. Persistent, unexplained nighttime crying is one of the ways low mood, grief, or long strained surface once distraction finally drops away. It is not a flaw in the night, it is a backlog the dark makes visible. Noticing this is not alarm, it is listening. Tears that keep returning may be asking for care in the waking hours, the way every unmet feeling eventually asks to be seen. The tears are rarely the thing that needs tending. They are the readout, not the fault. It is tempting to treat crying as the problem and to try to shut it off. But holding tears back keeps the regulation system loaded without letting it discharge. The feeling does not leave. It only waits. What tends to help is not silencing the cry, but caring for what it points toward. Rest, comfort, or support in the daylight. So the aim was never dry eyes. It was a mind that no longer has to carry everything alone until dark. And reaching for that is something every person is allowed to do. We began by asking why feelings held together all day finally spill over the moment the lights go out. That question has changed shape. A lowered nighttime dam. A nervous system stepping down. A relief that owes more to rebound than to any washout. None of these point to a weakness that breaks after dark. They point to a system doing what it was built to do. At the 1 hour, it finally can. What remains is not why the crying comes, but why we ever called it failure, and whether seen without shame. These tears are the tired brain regulating rather than falling apart. That is the turn the coming hours follow, still open, into the dark. You just heard the question turn, whether what breaks after dark was ever a failure, or a tired mind doing the one thing the long day left no room for. Notice, if you can, where you still brace against your own tears. The held breath, the tightness that flinches at the very word crying, the old reflex to be ashamed of it. There is no one here now for that shame to answer to. Let the bracing be felt, and let it soften without needing to be solved. The hours ahead lean further into exactly this. Not why the tears come, but how gently you might let them, here in the safe dark. The crying that arrives after dark may be your nervous system finishing work it could not complete by day. While the light was up, a region behind your forehead held strong feeling in a holding pattern, spending real energy to keep your face and voice steady. When that region tires in the evening, the held feeling is finally allowed to move instead of staying locked in place. Seen this way, the tears are not the system failing. They are the system clearing what it carried, closing after dark, the work the daylight left open. Holding a feeling back is not free, even when it looks like nothing is happening. Each hour of composure draws on the same limited pool of regulatory effort. And by evening, that pool runs low. When you let the wall come down at night, you stop paying that tax. The energy once spent keeping the surface calm is released, which is part of why a cry can leave you tired and lighter at once. This is not indulgence. It is a brain handing back effort it no longer has to spend once the long shift of holding is finally over. A tear can act as a switch for the rest of the body. As emotional crying builds and then eases, the nervous system tends to tip from its alert, daytime setting toward its slower, restorative one. Heart rate that climbed during the build begins to fall, breathing lengthens, the shoulders drop without being told. Researchers describe this as a parasympathetic shift, the settling that follows the tears rather than the tears themselves. The cry is less the storm than the turning of the weather, the body quietly changing gears from guarding to rest. There is more than one way for a mind to manage a feeling. One way holds the feeling down and keeps it from showing. The daytime strategy, effortful and tiring. Another way lets the feeling run its course and process through, which is closer to what happens when you cry. Neither is broken. They are two settings of the same system. The evening brain, with its lighter grip, is simply better suited to the second. What looks like losing control at night is often the mind switching to the gentler method it had no room for by day. When the daytime grip loosens at night, you can either fight that loosening or lean into it. Fighting it means trying to rebuild the wall with a tired brain, which rarely holds. Leaning in means letting the evening do what it is already set up to do. Allow, rather than suppress. Working with the tide costs less than working against it. And there is a quiet relief in the discovery that you were never meant to keep the wall standing every hour of every day. The brain itself takes it down once the day is done. You can meet the nighttime tears halfway by choosing when and where to let them come. A held feeling does not vanish because you refuse it. It waits, and often returns with more force. Setting aside a safe, private moment, the drive home, the dark bedroom, the quiet after the shower, gives the feeling a place to land on your terms. This is the dam lowered on purpose rather than breached by surprise. The same release happens, but you are no longer ambushed by it, and something about choosing it changes how it lands. Permission itself changes the physiology of a cry. When part of you fights the tears, the body stays braced, reading its own feeling as a threat to manage. When you allow them, that bracing eases, and the nervous system stops treating the moment as an alarm. The same tears, met with a quiet, "This is allowed," move through faster and settle deeper than tears fought the whole way. Your brain is always scanning for whether it is safe to let go, and the simplest way to tell it yes is to stop bracing against yourself. Darkness and solitude are not only when the crying happens, they can be part of why it helps. With no audience, the brain drops the work of managing how a feeling looks to others and turns fully to processing how it actually feels. The privacy you may have found embarrassing is the same privacy that lets the system work without performance. Alone in the dark, there is no face to keep composed, no voice to keep level. What remains is just you and the feeling, meeting without a witness to satisfy, which is exactly when the mind works most freely. Not all crying does the same thing, and the difference is worth knowing. A cry that loops on the same thought, tightening with each pass, tends to keep the body on alert. A cry that lets the feeling build, crest, and then ebb allows the calmer setting to take over afterward. The aim at night is not to stop the tears, but to let them find their arc rather than circle. When you stop feeding the story and simply let the wave move, the body is far more likely to be met by the quiet that follows. A completed cry tends to have a shape, like weather passing through. There is a gathering, a peak where it feels it may never end, and then a softening as the intensity spends itself. That softening is not you giving up on the feeling, it is the feeling being processed and the body beginning its downshift. Many people brace hardest right at the peak, certain it will only worsen. Yet the peak is usually the turn. Riding the wave to its far side is what lets the calm on the other shore finally arrive. The voice you use with yourself while you cry shapes how the cry lands. A harsh inner tone. Not this again. Pull it together. Keeps the threat system switched on, adding a second layer of distress on top of the first. A Kinderton, the sort you would use for someone you love, tells the same brain it is safe. Self-compassion is not softness for its own sake. It is a signal the nervous system reads directly. How you speak to yourself in the dark is, in a real sense, a physiological instruction. Somewhere in all this, the question we started with quietly turns. We began by asking why held feelings spill over the moment the lights go out, as if the spilling were the problem. But the more the mechanism shows itself, the more the spilling looks like the resolution, not the fault. The same brain that guarded all day is now doing the other half of its work, letting the guarded thing move and settle. What felt like coming undone is starting to look like coming back into balance. A system completing a cycle it had only paused. There is a simple test for self-kindness in the moment. Imagine a close friend crying alone at night the way you are. You would not call them weak or tell them to stop. You would sit with them and let them be. Turning that same steadiness toward yourself engages the very soothing pathways another person's comfort would. The brain does not fully distinguish kindness received from kindness offered inward. Alone, in the dark, you can still be the calming presence you would give so easily to anyone else. And your body answers to it the same way. Shame pours fuel on the very feeling it tries to stop. When you judge yourself for crying, the body reads the judgment as another danger, and its arousal climbs rather than falls. Compassion does the reverse. It lowers the alarm and lets the tears complete their arc. This is why the same cry can either drain you or restore you, depending less on the tears than on how you meet them. The feeling was always going to come at night. Whether it leaves you frayed or eased turns largely on the tone you bring to it. Putting a feeling into words can gently take some of its charge. When people name what they feel, this is grief. This is loneliness. Brain imaging work suggests the naming engages regulating regions and eases the raw signal rising from below. You do not talk yourself out of the feeling, you simply give it an edge. A name it can be held by. Whispered in the dark. Even a single honest word for what is moving through you can turn a shapeless flood into something the mind can begin to carry. The breath is the one part of this system you can reach directly. Most of the nervous system runs on its own, beneath awareness. But breathing sits on the border. Automatic, yet open to your hand. This is why breath becomes the natural companion to a nighttime cry. You cannot order your heart to slow or your thoughts to quiet, but you can lengthen an out-breath, and the rest of the body tends to follow. In a state where so little feels within your control, the breath is the quiet handle that is always within reach. A slow exhale speaks to the body in its own language. The long out-breath is tied to the vagus nerve, the main line of the calming, parasympathetic branch, and lengthening it nudges heart rate and arousal downward. This is not folklore. It shows up in the measurable slowing of the pulse across a drawn-out exhale. After a cry, a few unhurried breaths, with the out-breath longer than the in, can help the body find the calmer setting sooner. The tears open the door. The breath walks the body gently through it. There is a reason a cry often ends with a long, shaky breath drawn deep and slowly let go. That ragged inhale and extended exhale are the body's own method of resetting, a built-in move toward the parasympathetic calm. You have felt it without naming it. The stuttering breath after weeping that leaves the chest looser than before. Far from a sign of falling apart, it is a sign of the system righting itself. If you let that breath lengthen rather than rush past it, you cooperate with something the body already knows how to do. The uneven, catching breath that comes during hard crying is not a malfunction. As the diaphragm works through waves of feeling, breathing turns irregular, then gradually smooths as the wave passes. That smoothing is the outward sign of the nervous system stepping down from alert. Trying to force the breath steady in the middle of it only adds strain. Letting it stay ragged, trusting it to even out on its own, is closer to how the body actually recovers. The unevenness is part of the passage, not a break in it. Breath paired with tears works best when offered, not forced. If you turn slow breathing into one more task to perform perfectly, the body senses the effort and stays braced. The gentler approach is to let a long exhale arrive when it wants to, without counting or grading it. You are not operating a machine. You are keeping company with your own nervous system as it settles. The invitation is enough. A single, unhurried breath, given rather than demanded, tells the body the emergency is over and the night can soften around you. The most reliable gift of a good cry is the calm that arrives once it is over. Whatever remains uncertain about tears carrying stress chemistry away, the settling that follows is well observed. The turn into the body's restorative gear, the slowing pulse, the loosening muscles. People often describe feeling emptied and quiet afterward, closer to sleep than before. That after calm is not imagined. It is the nervous system rebalancing once the wave has passed. The cry is less about what leaves through the tears than about the state the body arrives in when they stop. Release, in a cry, is something the body registers physically. The jaw that was clenched all day loosens. The throat that stayed tight to hold words back opens. The shoulders drop from where they were carried. These are not metaphors, but real changes in muscle tension as the guarding effort ends. Much of what we call holding it together lives in the body as steady, quiet bracing. When the tears come and that bracing lets go, the relief you feel is those muscles finally being allowed to rest after a long day of standing guard. Crying and sleepiness often arrive close together, and that is no accident. As the body tips into its restorative setting after a cry, the same conditions that invite calm also invite sleep. Lowered arousal, slower breath, a mind with less to guard. Many people find that a good cry in the dark is followed by a heaviness in the eyes they had been chasing all evening. The tears are not keeping you from rest. They are often the last thing clearing the way to it. What felt like a low point can be the threshold of sleep. A nighttime cry can be a doorway rather than a detour. When you stop treating it as an interruption to get past and let it be part of the evening's settling, it tends to lead somewhere, toward the loosened body and quiet mind that rest asks for. The feeling moves. The breath lengthens. The guarding ends. And what is left is a stillness the day rarely allowed. You are not being kept awake by the tears. You are being carried through them into the kind of quiet the night was always meant to hold. Here is what the dark has been assembling, piece by piece. The crying that comes at night is not the day's failure catching up with you. It is a tired brain, its daytime grip eased, doing a second kind of work, letting feeling move and settle in the one place quiet enough to allow it. Emotional tears may lighten the body's load. The calm that follows them is real and measurable. Put together, nighttime crying is regulation, not weakness. The mind rebalancing in a safe darkness, closing gently what the long day left open. The settling you just heard about is already underway, if you let it. The grip loosening on its own, the way a long-held breath finally releases without being told to. Something has gathered into a single quiet idea. The tears were never you breaking, only a tired mind rebalancing where it is finally safe enough to. You do not carry the wall here, and you were never meant to hold it up alone. Let one slow breath leave you now, longer going out than coming in. What we have been moving toward all night is very close, just ahead in the dark. By now, the mechanism is clear enough to set down beside you. A tired regulator, its grip finally eased. A body releasing what it carried all day. None of it is broken. The only part of the nighttime cry that ever felt like a failure was the shame wrapped around it. And shame, unlike the tears, was never doing anything for you. It was simply along for the ride, uninvited, and you can leave it here in the dark. The evening loosening you feel is not your private flaw. The same slow release of control moves through every tired person as the hours wear on. The steady co-worker, the calm parent, the friend who seems unshakable. Each of them meets a version of this after dark. You are not the exception who breaks. You are simply doing, tonight, what the human mind does once the day finally lets go of it. Right now, in countless dark rooms, other people are crying quietly too. After the messages are answered, after the house goes still. It is one of the most common things a human being does, and one of the least spoken about. The privacy you feel is real, yet the experience is shared by more people than you could ever count. Alone in the dark, you are in enormous company. A tear at night is not a leak in something that was supposed to stay sealed. It is a release valve doing its work. The pressure that built while you held steady has somewhere to go, and the body opens the smallest door to let a little of it out. Nothing is failing when that door opens. Something is finally working the way it was built to work, quietly, on your behalf. A quiet often settles in on the far side of crying. As the tears ease, the body's calming branch, the part that slows the heart and softens the breath, tends to take over. Researchers find this settling is one of the better supported effects of a good cry. The relief you sometimes feel afterward is not imagined. It is your own nervous system stepping down into rest. Think of the regulator behind your forehead as a muscle you held tight all day. Muscles that stay clenched eventually let go. And the letting go is not weakness. It is recovery. When that inner grip loosens at night and feeling moves through, your mind is doing maintenance, not falling apart. The loosening is how it keeps working tomorrow. Rest is not the opposite of strength. It is what strength is made from. Notice that the emotion and the embarrassment are two separate things. The sadness or tenderness is old, wordless, human. The embarrassment on top of it was learned somewhere. A quiet message that grown people stay composed. That tears belong to weakness. But that message is a costume laid over the feeling. Underneath, the crying itself carries no verdict about you at all. It is simply what a full heart does when the room goes quiet. During the day, part of you performs for the people watching, leveling the voice, steadying the face. At night, that audience is gone, and what surfaces is not a lesser you. It is the version with nothing left to manage. The self that cries in the dark is not the weak one hiding behind the strong one. It is the whole one, finally unwatched, letting the held breath out at last. Even with no one there to see, a tear still carries meaning. It is a signal, first to yourself, that something touched you, that something mattered enough to move you. Alone in the dark, you are telling yourself the truth. Your daytime face kept quiet. That is not coming undone. That is a moment of honesty passing between you and you, with no one else it has any reason to convince. The same face that held its shape through the meeting is allowed to move now. All day, it did the work of composure, and composure has a cost. When it finally softens and the mouth trembles and the eyes fill, that is not the mask slipping. It is the face resting after a long shift. You do not owe steadiness to an empty room, and the room is not asking for it. Crying tonight does not erase how capable you were today. Both are true at once. The person who kept everything together and the person who comes apart a little after dark are the same person, and neither cancels the other. The tears take nothing back. They do not undo the meeting you carried or the calm you offered someone else. Strength and softness live in one body, taking turns as the light changes. Often the one who cries quietly at night is the one who carried the most by day. Holding steady for others draws down a real reserve, and what is spent is felt somewhere. The nighttime tears are frequently the toll of daytime care, not a sign you are fragile, but a sign you gave. The stronger the wall you held through the day, the more there is to set down when it finally lowers. So here is what the dark has been quietly showing, feeling by feeling. The tears were never the failure. They were the release on the far side of a guard you were no longer keeping, the mind regulating itself in the 1 hour it could. What you called coming undone was your own repair, wearing the face of sadness. The failure was never in the crying. It was only ever in believing the crying was something to hide. Try meeting yourself the way you would meet a tired friend who finally let go. You would not tell them they were weak. You would sit a little closer, lower your voice, and let them cry. The same gentleness is available to turn inward. The person crying in the dark deserves the kindness you would give anyone else in that moment. And that person is you, worth the softness you hand out so freely to others. The dark around you is not a witness keeping score. It asks nothing, judges nothing, remembers nothing. It is simply the room where the day's audience finally cleared out. In that emptiness, the crying has no one to answer to. Let the darkness be a companion rather than a courtroom, a wide, quiet space that holds whatever moves through you tonight and never once calls it weakness. A cry, left alone, tends to finish on its own. Fought against, it lingers and tightens, allowed to run. It crests, eases, and settles into quiet. The body knows the shape of it. When you stop bracing against the tears and let them complete, they take less from you, not more. The wave you were holding back is often gentler than the holding was. Letting it move is how it passes through. Tomorrow's version of you is not weakened by tonight's tears. Morning tends to arrive lighter after the pressure has somewhere to go. The cry does not carry into the day as damage. More often, it clears a little room. What felt like falling apart at midnight can look, by morning, like the reason you can stand steady again. The night took the weight the day could not. The relief is the point. The hush that follows the tears. The loosened chest. The slower breath. That quiet is not empty. It is the settled state your body was reaching for the whole time it held the tension. Crying was the way through to it, not a detour away from it. If a stillness comes after, receive it as the thing the tears were always working toward. The memory of crying alone at night carries no sting once you let it soften. You are allowed to remember it as a night you were honest with yourself, not a night you failed to hold on. Recast gently. The image changes. A person in the dark, letting something true move through them, and being softer for it in the morning. Nothing about that memory owes you a single moment of embarrassment. Tonight, the dark is full of people doing exactly this, releasing quietly what the day would not let them show. You are part of a vast, unspoken company of tender hearts, each in their own room, each half sure they are the only one. The privacy of your tears is real, and so is the company. In the most solitary moment, you are joined to nearly everyone who has ever held a whole day together. You are allowed to come undone and still be whole. The two are not opposites. A person can weep in the dark and be, in that same breath, entirely intact. Nothing lost. Nothing broken. Only the day's holding set down for the night. Wholeness was never the same as never crying. It is what stays steady underneath, holding on while the surface moves. That part of you did not go anywhere tonight. If you set down one thing tonight, let it be the shame, not the tears. The crying was doing something for you, releasing, settling, easing you back toward rest. The shame was only extra weight you carried on top, and it never earned its place. Keep the release. Keep the quiet that follows. Let the embarrassment be the single thing you leave on the floor beside the bed. Unpacked. Unneeded. Gone. There is nothing in you to repair for having cried. You did not malfunction. A tired brain eased the grip it had held all day, and feeling moved through the opened space the way water finds its way downhill. Naturally, without fault. You are not a problem that leaked. You are a person who felt something and let it pass. The machinery worked. It was always working. You were never the thing that broke. So you can leave the holding down now. There is no one left to keep it up for, and no morning that will thank you for having kept it. Whatever rose tonight has been felt, and feeling it was enough. Let the last of the day's effort loosen from your jaw, your shoulders, your hands. The night has room for all of it, and asks you to carry none of it into sleep. The tears were never the failure. They were how you set the day down. All those hours you held the world level. And then, in the dark, you let yourself be held instead. There was nothing to be ashamed of. Only a tender heart, doing the oldest human thing, mending quietly where no one had to see. You cried, and you were not weak. you cried, and you were mending. Rest now. You were always allowed. We started at the wall behind your forehead, the tired regulator that loosens its grip after dark. And we ended somewhere softer, with the shame set down on the floor beside the bed. Along the way, the calm that arrives on the far side of a cry turned out to be your own nervous system settling. And the tears themselves turned out to be a release valve rather than a leak. The thread running through all of it was simple. What looked like coming undone was a mind quietly regulating itself, and it never once needed your permission to begin. What you carry out of tonight is lighter than what you brought in. The tears kept, the shame left behind, and a quiet certainty that crying in the dark was never weakness, only release finding its way out. If tonight loosened something in you, and you know someone else who holds it all together until the lights go out, you might quietly leave this where they will find it. No pressure, only a small kindness passed to another tender heart in the dark. However you found your way here, I am glad the quiet reached you tonight. Picture the wall you held all day, standing down now. Not knocked over, just lowered, resting like everything else in the house. Feel how the grip behind your eyes has already begun to soften on its own, with nothing left for you to manage. Let your whole being settle into the dark the way warmth sinks into a pillow, every held thing loosening and going quiet. There was never anything here to be ashamed of, only a tender heart, finally allowed to rest. The wall is down, the day is behind the door, and the dark has taken the weight from your hands. Let your breath slow to the pace of the quiet. In, soft, out, softer, each exhale carrying a little more of the holding away. There is nothing left to keep together tonight. You can let sleep come the way the tears came, on its own, unforced, arriving the moment you stop bracing against it. The Sleepy Psychology Facts playlist has been sitting with the tender workings of the mind, one quiet night at a time. The next video carries this further. That video is waiting whenever you are ready. And if more tears come while your eyes are already closed, let them fall and stay fallen. No one is counting them here, and there is nothing left to wipe away. Rest now, tender one. The tears were never your weakness. They were only how you let the long day go. This is Sleepy Psychology Facts, where understanding your own heart becomes a place soft enough to lay it down. Good night.